Thank you so much, Reverend Wallace, for your words and for your leadership all these many decades here in Washington. We gather all day today as our nation is reeling once again, this time from the escalating destruction of mass shootings in Buffalo, Uvalde, Tulsa, tragedies that have once again shattered our complacency and aroused the dormant conscience of our nation. We gather today to assure our elected officials that the American people are ready for leaders who will take on sensible gun reform. My name is Rabbi David Saperstein, and I am the Director Emeritus of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism. Reform Judaism is the largest and most diverse denomination in America, Jewry. Nearly 2 million Jews identify with the movement. For over 4 decades, I have worked for sensible and effective gun violence prevention measures, and I'm here tonight with a measure of hope that at least some progress can and will be made if our Congress has the moral and political courage to make it happen and to do it soon. With my distinguished colleagues of different religious beliefs this evening, we stand united in our response to the question, is the need for sensible gun reform a religious issue? You bet it is. As Rabbi Eric Yaffe, the former president of the Union for Reform Judaism, observed in his speech at the Million Mom March over 20 years ago, the indiscriminate distribution of guns is an offense against God and humanity. Our gun-flooded, violence-prone society has turned weapons into idols, and the appropriate religious response to idolatry is sustained moral outrage. So with my colleagues, I ask today, what manner of nation are we that in the face of overwhelming support for stronger, more effective gun safety reform, we can bring ourselves to legislate only the most anemic controls for the bloodiest problem we face? What manner of people are we that we can accept that we have lost more people to gun violence in our streets and in our homes than we have to all the wars in the history of our nation? More children every 14 months than all our brothers and sisters who perished on 9/11. And the victims of violence overwhelm our emergency rooms, require the costliest of care, erode confidence in our communal institutions, and undermine our political, educational, and civic institutions. And above all, we remember the anguish of the families and friends, the residual trauma felt by communities plagued by gun violence, the grief and heartache over loved ones stolen from our midst. Yet for over 2 decades now, we have not deviated from the path of rampant gun violence that so devastates our schools, increases the numbers of completed suicides, and brings deadly violence into every corner of American life. Our businesses, our houses of worship, our playgrounds, our homes. And it doesn't have to be that way. In 2020, over 45,000 Americans died of gun-related violence, breaking all records. By contrast, in 2019, the last year we have statistics, Japan, with 1/3 the population of the United States, had 9 deaths. It doesn't have to be this way. 28 years ago, our legislators had the moral vision and political courage to pass an assault weapons ban. It wasn't perfect, but it certainly reduced significantly, as much as 66%, the number of people who were killed with those kinds of weapons. And what does the Bible tell us of our response? Do not stand idly by the blood of our neighbor, God commands in Leviticus 19. Is that not exactly the sin that our nation has been engaged in? Watching the blood of our children spill over and over and over again. The great medieval Jewish philosopher and legal scholar Maimonides observed, anyone who can save and does not save a life, transgressors do not stand by the blood of your neighbor, and gives examples. including those who are attacked by bandits. Congress has had ample opportunity to avoid standing idly by the blood of our neighbors. Will they now rise to the test? And will they once again fail? Or finally make progress? Our legislators in the gun lobby want to blame everybody but themselves. The problem, they say, is mental illness. Well, you know the response to such claims. We certainly know the response to such claims. Congress knows the response to such claims. Tautologically, on the one hand, mass murderers are emotionally disturbed, albeit not always technically mentally ill. On the other hand, the compelling evidence testifies that the overwhelming percentage of those with mental illness are not violent, actually more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators. More compellingly, in Canada and Japan, there are people with the exact same mental illnesses as here in America, but those nations don't allow an 18-year-old to legally purchase an AR-15 at his local gun store, or don't allow a 20-year-old to pick up his mother's legally obtained Bushmaster and walk into a school and randomly kill our children. Nor can they purchase high-capacity magazines that make mass murder so much easier to perpetrate. The National Public Radio piece describes the impact of an AR-15, which is a weapon used by the gunmen at Robb Elementary when it rips into the human body. Quote, "It is designed to blow targets apart. It is a weapon built for war. And when fired into an adult human body, the bullet travels with such fierce velocity that it can decapitate a person or leave a body looking, quote, like a grenade went off in there," as Peter Rhee, a trauma surgeon at the University of Arizona, told Wired. The carnage the weapon leaves behind has become a signature of school shootings and other mass shootings. Our legislators and gun lobbies too often blame our violent culture and violence in the media, violent action films, gory horror movies, violent computer games, and this is a deeply troubling dynamic in American life and across the globe. Yes, there is too much violent entertainment, and for some it inures their sensitivity to violence. But in the UK and Germany, children watch the same movies. They play the exact same computer games, and they don't go out and kill people afterwards. Children in Germany, Japan, the UK, and Canada, and so many other nations across the globe with far less gun violence than ours, they're not more religious than our children. And their parents are not better parents than ours are. What distinguishes us from them is the prevalence of our guns and the reticence of our leaders to act with courage and conviction on this issue, the way that Australia, Norway, New Zealand, the UK did after a single mass killing. What a difference. As Rabbi Rick Jacobs, the current president for the Union for Reform Judaism, has said, it is not enough for elected officials to muster their thoughts and prayers when such tragedies happen. Like millions of Americans, he said, I'm sick of the pathetic excuses offered by too many lawmakers for not passing strong and effective common sense gun laws. His comment evokes the line in the Talmud, written at the time that Jesus of Nazareth lived, that debates amongst the rabbis, which is more important, study or action? Lo hamidrashi kar el hama says, study is not the essential thing. The doing is the essential thing. Which is more important? Only study is the most important when it leads to action. So we come here with one voice to challenge the dangerously mistaken belief that the forces of the status quo are too formidable and that the American people are too complacent, that our leadership is too reticent. We are here to say it is time to take assault weapons and semi-automatic weapons off our streets. We are here to say it is time for stronger, more universal background checks that really work. We're here to say we must ban high-capacity magazines. We're here to say it is time to pass Ethan's Law, mandating safe storage of firearms in residence where minors and or unauthorized persons reside. We're here to say we must close deadly loopholes like the boyfriend loophole. We're here to call on millions of parents in America's pews to demand action to protect their children. We're here to ask America's clergy to raise up this issue from their pulpits, beginning this weekend until Congress passes legislation, to send their sermons to their members of Congress, to their congregants, to the local media, and to mobilize our congregants to flood Congress with the demand to act now. We are here today, as we will be here in the future, for one reason above all, that the children of Uvalde, the worshipers at Mother Emanuel and Tree of Life in the Sikh temple, the countless more victims of gun violence everywhere, will not be forgotten, and that hope and some good may yet come from these tragedies. For the parents mourning children who will never come home again, for the children mourning parents who will never hold them again, for the grieving families and friends who will never hear their loved ones' laughter again, for those who suffer grief, injury, or trauma in the public eye or in anonymity. We see you. We are with you. Your pain is our pain. We will speak for you and for those that were lost. As Rabbi Jonah Pesner, the current director of the Religious Action, prayed recently, may God forgive our country for loving guns more than children. Let us so act today as to ensure that no faith leader, advocate, parent, teacher, or student should have to make a speech like this again. Let this be the last righteous outcry of grief over young children who are shot and killed at school. Let this be the last time an American president must comfort grieving communities due to such violence. And let the world see an America united in our sacred obligation to protect all God's children. And to that, let us say, Amen.